Sean, thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I spoke to you for the first time a few months ago, and I'll tell you this here for the first time. You did affect my life. I won't say change my life completely, but you affected my life. You've introduced me to your prism of thought about certain things and just led me to investigate for myself down different paths, rabbit holes, whatever you want to call it. So I wanted to speak to you, invite you here, share those insights, share that this information with our listeners, our followers, which are therapists from really all over the world, manual therapists, massage therapists, physiotherapists, that are maybe they are exposed to different types of people, injuries, athletes, but through their prism of thought. So here we want to get your prism of thought. So I'll start with, if it's okay, by guiding you. You told me you hate traveling. Why?
So first off, it's a privilege to be here. I really appreciate you bringing me out. I don't travel to Tel Aviv for everyone, so consider it. Maybe it's the cute hair, maybe it's the impression you gave me as well. And I think that the goal of every educator should be able to give that elevator pitch impact, because you're going to come across tons of massage therapists, physical therapists, trainers in your life, and some of them you'll remember, some of them you'll forget their name a minute later. So the fact that I met you for maybe an hour and I was able to impact you for your life, I really appreciate hearing that, because it means whatever my prism of thought, I've never used that word before, I appreciate that, affected you. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
So traveling.
So
is it a physical act of traveling?
So it's two things. First of all, my general personality type is like go-getter. So I'm always doing stuff. So when you're driving, unless you want to get a 1,500 shekel ticket, you can't really do other stuff, right? So you're driving and you're sitting and maybe you're listening to a podcast, maybe you're listening to music, maybe you're taking a phone call. In fact, most of my traveling, whether it's by public transportation, bus, or car, usually turns into an office space. So if it's by car, I'm listening to a podcast or taking client phone calls, consultations, speaking with my athletes, speaking with colleagues. If it's public transportation, I'm usually, editing work on social media, writing, corresponding with clients, working on my next big project, whatever it may be. But the actual act of traveling is the sitting that bothers me. I think it bothers me from two angles. Number one, as an athlete and as a coach, I try to lead by example. And I'm always trying to do what I call ground sitting, which means I'll rarely ever sit in the structured chair that society gave us. I'm always either sitting on the floor, lying on my tummy, on my knees, working at a standing desk. I'm always doing all sorts of alternative methods of light, low-intensity movement throughout the day, because I believe that's what we evolved to do. We didn't really evolve to sit for 8 hours in a chair. So the sitting really bothers me. And I just get antsy, meaning even if I wasn't this guy trying to biohack my life and trying to stay active throughout the day, I don't enjoy sitting. So even when I drive, you'll find my left leg, nice and here. You'll find my left leg twitching. You'll find me reaching and trying to get overhead. So I'm basically trying to sneak in a mobility session while driving.
Yeah, every time I drive, if it's more than 20 minutes, something does not feel right. Whether it's my hip, my back, something is not okay. So I understand. So I do appreciate it. And I have you sitting here with me. So Thank you very much for that. And you were saying, I'll take you to your podcast for a second. You're used to doing this sitting, but inside an ice tub.
Correct. So I have the Cold Feet podcast. Thank you for the cameo there. We're usually two people kind of ground sitting / squatting in the ice bath. And because you're cold, you're constantly moving. So that's an added bonus of being in a cold tub. And even in the sauna, I'll go from squatting to sitting to lying to standing. It's difficult for me as a human to stay still, which I'm thankful and grateful in my line of work. I'm usually always moving, but sometimes I have to put on my professional face and do things like this. And I'm cool with that. Because the same way that I believe that we evolved to not sit, I believe that we also evolved to do anything. So if I have to sit for an hour or two, that's just part of what my body needs to do at the moment. And an hour or two after that, I can bounce back. I'm not going to be stuck in a seated position with tight hips forever if I'm actively doing something about it.
Yeah. And how long do you sit in the ice tub?
So we've had podcast lengths from 10 minutes all the way to 90 minutes. Our longest episode was how to build a perfect tactical athlete. Speaking of military, because I believe of serving the Army, seeing what went on there, that they're not really giving enough of an emphasis on strength and conditioning and actually building the physical resilience to their soldiers. So I had a colleague of mine who also served in an elite unit, who also works with elite athletes, and we just back and forth for 90 minutes. No hyperthermia. Hyperthermia was episode 4. That was also a tactical episode. It was in a natural pool of water outside in December. Spoke with a friend of mine who served in Okets, which is the K9 unit,
Yep.
where girls serve as well. And the topic was, should women serve in combat? Nice and controversial. And we both got hyperthermia after being 60 minutes in the outdoor pool in this setting, as opposed to my cold plunge.
So tell me about hypothermia. What was the outcome of that?
So the
recovery.
Outcome of that was after we finished the podcast, because we were in this random natural pool of water, we still had to hike back home. So that was great.
So what does hypothermia technically mean?
So hyperthermia usually means that your body stops functioning because it's too cold. So it can no longer, basic cognitive function, your brain kind of slows down a bit. For me, I've never taken drugs. I've never taken hallucinogens. Is that the correct term? Or psychedelics?
Yeah.
I think I hit it there. Because as I was hiking back, we still had a 2-hour hike back to the car. I felt like I was walking on clouds, and I was like, wow, that's what it feels. I don't suggest this to normal people. It just kind of happened because we were getting, caught up in the episode, and next thing you know, we're very cold.
Yeah, so speaking of suggesting to normal people, you did mention that you see yourself, what I'm trying to use the term that you use, crazy, weird, one of those? Special.
I'm special. I'm an alien. Do you like my disguise?
I love it.
So yesterday, one of my colleagues, who's I train her. She's one of my athletes. She's a lacrosse player, basketball player, flag football player, Iron Woman, right up my alley. And she said, "You're weird." And I said, "Thanks, you're weird too." So I don't think I'm different. I think that all humans were born in a womb of a female, right? We're all the same humans, me and you. Doesn't matter how successful you are, how rich you are, how big you are. I just realized as I interact with more and more people that most people don't live the lifestyle I live. Like, why are you walking barefoot? Or why are you sitting on the ground? Or why are you trying to wear only natural clothing? Because mainstream society does mainstream things, and I'm accepting of that. I don't alienate myself from society. I work with society every day, and I don't feel superior to society because I do things. I do my thing. You want to vote that guy? Speaking of voting, you vote that guy, I vote that guy. We can still be friends.
Yeah, we don't have to get into politics.
Yeah.
But have you heard of active sitting? These active sitting chairs?
Yes, I have.
Have you tried one out? Yeah, please.
I don't have the stool. I know you're talking about, because I'm a biohacker of sorts. Biohacking is trying to enhance your longevity and performance through various stuff throughout the day beyond the conventional fitness and nutrition, which people think health is. What I do have, though, is many things in my workspace, which is hidden next to my gym near my home, which allow me to hack in movement. So, for example, I have a standing desk. It's just a basic, kind of like a DJ stand where I can put my laptop on. And I can adjust it. If I want to kneel, I can adjust it to around hip height. If I want to stand, it's at desk height. And then I have this funky chair, let's say dinner time. So dinner time, especially in Judaism, sorry, let me rephrase that. Mealtime always used to be a time of family and prayer and gratitude. Doesn't matter what religion you are, who you believe in, but hey, wife, hey, husband, hey, let's enjoy the meal together. Let's say grace. Let's thank God. If you don't believe in God, let's thank the farmers who brought us this wheat to our table. And meals have become this kind of let's shovel down McDonald's while catching up on the latest episode of Game of Thrones. So even though I'd like to sit on the floor for meal times as well, out of respect for the meal, to make it a little more elevated and elevate the food, elevate the moment, I have this funky chair which allows me to sit either basically on it in a squat with my legs up, or it's hard to explain, but kind of in a semi-kneeling position. So I'm never getting into that classic Titan squat. So if I'm not sitting on the floor or on the beanbag or standing or kneeling or lunging around the beam or some other movement device, then I'm sitting on this kneeling chair. I also rarely sit. So
yeah, so I was recently exposed to this, the idea of active chairs and active sitting, and these different products out there that are really trying to promote this, and they seem suppressed by mainstream society, by our Western society, and by these big corporations that have been pushing or the chairs we're sitting on at this moment for so many years. And it's the idea of sitting on a chair that requires you to use some of your core muscles, some of your muscles that are responsible for your stability. And the idea of sitting on a chair that doesn't have a backrest seems crazy.
Foreign, yeah.
Very foreign. And almost seems so far away and so unachievable. Whereas, again, based on anecdotes, case studies that I've heard, it's just it's a transition, and it's a process that if you actually invest in for a couple days, a couple weeks, some people a couple months, you really get used to it, and you can sit actively and comfortably at the same time. So I think that's very interesting. And when I started going through this path of finding out more about active sitting, it seemed to me very parallel to the world of shoes, the idea of barefoot. What do you think?
The bike is mine. So I want to address the active sitting for a moment, and then kind of dive into this whole world of questioning the norm, looking at mainstream stuff and saying, wait a minute, just because mainstream and the world is pushing this doesn't necessarily mean that's what's best for me. So when it comes to active chairs, first of all, it's not really about just having the standing desk or just having the desk treadmill set up. It's about what are you doing in your life? So if having that active chair or having that standing desk is part of your greater journey to be the healthiest human that you could, then it's fantastic. If someone is working on an active chair but is still eating, junk all day and not really moving and not getting fresh air, not getting sunshine, it's not that magic hack. And that applies to barefoot as well. Just because I wear barefoot shoes, if I'm not training, mobilizing, getting outside, spending time with loved ones, spending some time meditating, maybe intermittent fasting, whatever your form of worship is, it's not the magic cure. I think all these things together can make the ideal, happy, holistic human. And diving into that, I think that most fitness professionals, who many of our listeners are, we think of health as very close-minded. We think of health as fitness, movement, mobility, training, soft tissue work, gymming, outdoor calisthenics, CrossFit, sports, whatever it may be, nutrition. And if you're feeling, to push yourself one step further into the world, we think sleep and recovery. But there's so much more, right? We just spoke. Sitting. If I'm training an hour or two a day, but the rest of my life is spent sitting hunched over a computer, that's a problem. While I'm sitting, what am I breathing? While I'm breathing, what toxins in the air, like mold, for example, which is prevalent around where I live, in Achlot, in Jerusalem, or in Tel Aviv, what toxins is my body being exposed to? Are any toxins being released from my clothes if they're made from polyester or plastic? What temperatures am I being exposed to? Am I always working in a temperature-regulated office, which is at the perfect temperature that my body needs? Or is my body exposing itself to extreme stimulus like cold water or really, really hot temperatures? Now, in the modern world, we replace those with a cold plunge in a sauna. But let's go a few hundred years back or a few thousand years back. These things didn't exist. That's just because the forager, the native warrior to his land, had to swim in the river in the winter to catch the fish or to cross it. And they also had to expose themselves in the midday sun to forage the berries. So all these biohacks that we're doing, like back to the example of the active chair, is just going back to a day and age when active chairs didn't exist, because if we sat, we were sitting on the ground. So every tool that we use to hack our life is just, it's not so much it's not so much enhancing the quality of our life magically. It's replacing the more harmful object that can be harming our life, such as sitting on the couch too long, such as sitting on the chair too long.
Yeah, so maybe the active chair is not ideal, but it's a huge step forward or a better situation to be in than sitting in a normal chair, what we know of as. So maybe same with shoes. So because of you and to respect you, and I'm wearing my first ever pair of barefoot shoes. I don't know if you noticed.
I did notice. In fact, the second I saw you, I noticed your new Vivo barefoot shoes. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I've been wearing them now for a couple months. Every opportunity I have to walk in them, I walk in them. That's as far as I have gone at this moment in my process of walking barefoot. But tell me about it. What initiated this within you? When were you exposed to this idea? Because, sorry, but you grew up in the US, right?
Correct.
And I'm assuming most of your life, you wore Nike shoes?
I wore conventional shoes, Adidas, Nike. On the Sabbath, I would wear just random dress shoes, whatever I got. I never thought about it until around 7 years ago. And I came across Vibrant Five Fingers. I think that there's three types of barefoot shoe wearers. There's the people who whatever, I wear my shoes, I hang out. Sometimes I wear Nike, sometimes I wear Vivo Barefoot, sometimes I play barefoot, sometimes I don't. Then there's people who are exploring their wardrobe. So they'll have a barefoot hiking shoe and a barefoot sandal and a barefoot shoe. But they'll still wear conventional shoes sometimes. Whereas then there's people like me who are gung-ho. Like, you will never see me wearing a regular shoe unless it's for demonstrative purposes. So if I'm making like an Instagram post or giving a corporate workshop, or giving an athletic workshop, teaching people how the foot works and how the shoe affects your foot. So I think 7-8 years ago, I got my first pair of Vibram 5 Fingers, which are the notorious toe shoes, which there was a lawsuit against them because people didn't transition properly. Let's go back to active chair. Because my core starts hurting or my hip starts hurting because I started sitting on an active chair, I can't sue the chair company. I have to get stronger if I just spent 20 years of regular sitting, right? So that's what's kind of happened with Vibram. People win on running their regular 10, 15, 20 kilometer runs, and then they sued Vibram saying they claim that their shoes have health benefits. Their shoes don't have magic health benefits. Their shoes allow your foot to function properly. If I just spend 20 years weakening my foot, then obviously I can't go to my 20K. I have to re-strengthen my foot, and it may take years to get back to it, specifically for runners. That was when I started the journey. About 4 years ago, I mentioned before, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I was playing for a tackle football team and also working with them. And I wore cleats that were half a size too small on me. And I wore like an insole in them. Not a supportive insole, but like not it was a very rigid, thick insole that was supposed to like, enhance your performance and, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Give a little carbon return to it. And the 8 months right before I began that football season, I did everything possible. I was training from a strength and conditioning perspective at the highest level I could. So 4 strength and power days a week, mobility every day, heat and sauna, cold and heat when necessary, speed and agility twice a week, practicing. And I went from being a okay tackle football player to a really, really good football player. And people were like, whoa. Because people don't, athletes, especially in the semi-professional world, I'm not talking about the NFL level, they don't make transformations, right? Either you're a good player and you get a little bit better, or you're okay. And in 1 year, I transformed. But that 1 year, in the first game, I sprained my ankle. The next game, I broke my rib. The next game, I tore my LCL. And I was still playing because that was just the mentality. And it didn't make sense to me. I said, how is it possible that I just spent 8 months training at the highest level possible, eating enough, fueling, recovering, and I'm still getting injured? So I looked at my feet for the first time. I questioned them. Keep in mind, I already had Vibram 5 Fingers, and I was already like, here and there wearing them, but I wasn't fully into the cult, as they would say. Not that it's a cult. My feet were smushed together. My pinky toe from the cleats are notoriously narrow.
Yeah.
My pinky toe was smushed in. My big toe was smushed in. My calf was hurting me. I sprained my ankle. My LCL, right, the ligament by the knee was torn, and it just made sense to me. And the second I took them off, I started having relief. And that's when I did this seminar called the Foot Collective Seminar, and it just all made sense to me. And then I realized that even though the barefoot shoe world is, at the end of the day, shoes are apparel, correct? They're footwear, the things we wear. For me, it was never about that. It was about performance. I said, whoa, what if I can bring this knowledge of barefoot performance to my athletes? What if my athletes' feet aren't hurting them when they train? What if, and this is that Vivo Barefoot did the studies, what if training my feet enhances my athletic performance? Disclaimer, like I said before, back to active chair, being barefoot / just wearing barefoot shoes is not the whole equation. But I believe for many, it's the missing link because many people like you and me have had foot pain for many years, or constantly spraining their ankles, or unexplained something happening, whether it's pain, whether it's an injury, and they can't explain why it's happening. Sometimes just switching to that zero drop flexible shoe makes all the difference. So that's when I went gung ho, and professional athletes who compete for Israel, we're warming up on the field barefoot. We're spending as much time barefoot as possible. Those who would like to, I'm not there to convince them. If they'd like to, in their day-to-day, they wear minimalist footwear.
Yeah.
And I've seen so much success stories, like hands-on case studies in front of my eyes. Oh, their feet aren't hurting them anymore. They're running better.
When does it go wrong with barefoot?
So we brought up the case before. When I give my corporate workshops, I say this as well. The one exception that you want to be wary about transitioning too quickly is runners. Because runners are doing a repetitive stride again and again for distance, specifically endurance runners. So if I take a guy who runs 30 kilometers per run or whatever it is, long distance, and then goes from his cushioned heel strike all the way to a uncushioned forefoot strike or continuous heel striking, his feet and his body are not ready to absorb that impact of the shoes, of the force. So he or she has to transition slowly. We'll do one run with the regular shoes, one run barefoot on a soft surface like grass, and one run with barefoot shoes or barefoot. And then we'll kind of transition to there. So runners have to have the longest progression to transition correctly. But I would say any day-to-day people, if you're having foot pain, if you're having calf pain, if you're having repetitive ankle sprains, if you have unexplained back pain, try minimalist footwear. Day to day. Don't run with it.
Yeah.
You can train with it. Don't do any sort of jumping, running, impact stuff. Just switch out your regular shoes.
And in your personal experience, for day-to-day people, you haven't experienced someone that has had it go wrong?
I have not. In fact, it's all about what your lifestyle is. So if you're a regular dude and you're just kind of walking out and about, a lot of times your feet will hurt. Of course they're hurting because your feet aren't ready for it yet. So that's where whenever I tell someone to buy a barefoot shoe, I provide them with resources. Here's the exercise you're doing to strengthen your arch. Here's how to release it with a lacrosse ball, to release the fascia. Here's how to strengthen your toes. Meaning it's a journey like anything in life.
I'm a runner, not 30 kilometers, but I run. And I walked into the Vivo store in London and I asked for the sales lady to direct me to their running shoe. And she did. And I asked her to get me a pair. And she asked my size. And then after asking my size, she looked at me, she scanned my body, and she said, I don't recommend you buy these. Go home, do some research, see if you're ready to buy these shoes, and then come back. I said, I'm size 44.5. Can I please have my shoes? Because I have done the research. But kudos to Vivo for that, because that was, for me at least, a first-time experience, hearing that from a salesperson, and an eye-opening one. And she's absolutely right, because you mentioned that, especially for runners, your body is not ready for or not equipped to deal with that heel strike, that force that's being shot up to your body with every stride you take. Is there also an element, though, of forget not being equipped or ready for it, but actually changing the biomechanics of the way you're running?
Absolutely. I'm wowed by that story. And I think that ties in that barefoot shoe companies are not selling you a shoe. They're selling you a concept. They're selling you a health hack. And a good barefoot shoe company like Vivo Barefoot, which is leading in the world in case studies and research into barefoot running and barefoot lifestyle and barefoot athleticism, they're trying to actually help you. They're not just trying to sell you a product and saying, figure it out yourself. So from a biomechanical perspective, cushion shoes, which by the way, were invented in the 90s, that's a very recent invention. Yeah. Before then, most shoes were like Van style, flat soled. Even runners back then were running in flat style sneakers. Nike and other large companies started coming out with research, perhaps biased, that was saying that if I can have a very, very thick cushion on my sneaker, it will allow me to absorb force better and prevent injury. Unfortunately, the running injuries have just kept on going up. But the companies out there, I'll stop naming companies, so not, shame anything, just kept on getting thicker. If you walk into any conventional shoe store, you will see marshmallows with some fabric on top of them. So what the marshmallow does is it allows you to land on your heel. Now, I know we're in a smaller space. I can't really get a live demo going on, but try to envision yourself running. In fact, if you're listening, just stand up and start running. If you're wearing shoes, especially if you're used to being in conventional footwear, your body will automatically land on the heel. And if you land the heel, not only is the jarring force of the ground impact jarring into your bone, which goes right up your body, but you're also landing in a completely locked position. So your knee is locked. Locked joints are not a great way to produce force. In fact, when we teach landing mechanics to our athletes, if you're jumping and landing, you land in a semi-squat position, like anything you do. In addition to that, because of the jarring force, there's no shock absorber, so the knees, the hips, /spine, all the way upstream takes all the force. If you take off your shoes, even if you're not an experienced barefooter, if that's a real term, you will notice how you immediately start landing on your forefoot because it's very uncomfortable to land in your heel when there's nothing cushioning there. So even if you're in conventional footwear, it's still more ideal to forefoot strike because A, the arch is like a spring, like a pogo stick, which absorbs the initial force. The knee is now in a bent position, which transfers to your hip much more efficiently, and your body can produce and return force more efficiently. In fact, there were studies on runners, nothing to do with the barefoot world, that forefoot strikers are more efficient runners because they're using the arch of the foot for the recoil effect, the springiness to return running and to keep up the repetitive stride.
Maintain momentum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And runners are always trying to improve running efficiency. So what if I can tell you that minimalist running, if transitioned correctly, is actually going to improve your running efficiency in the long term? The problem being, most athletes, especially in the competitive world, don't care about long term. They care about the gold medal in the next Olympics. So if I say to them, hey man, I want you to spend 10 years of your life so you can play in a minimalist cleat so you won't harm your feet, and when you're 80 years old, you'll be strong and healthy. I'll be like, dude, Olympics is in 2028. By the way, I'll be there. That's the plan. Olympics is in 2028. All I care about is the podium. I don't care about 20 years of life. In fact, most athletes' feet, if you've ever seen LeBron James' feet, are not healthy. But that's not their goal. Their goal is performance and longevity before health. And we're looking at the greater picture of health. But yes, absolutely, there's a single focused difference in biomechanics if you look at a cushion sneaker runner, specifically a heel striker versus a forefoot striker.
For the day-to-day person, even an athlete, are there cases where they do require some marshmallow? I'm going to start using that term.
It's a good term. It's a good term. So
some support to the foot.
Now, we're going to go a little bit into what is a minimalist shoe, so we'll understand it better. A minimalist shoe is a shoe that allows the foot to optimize its function, which means that the shoe is not supporting the foot in any way. It's just allowing the foot to be the foot. Make sense?
Makes sense
Sweet.
to me.
Within those characteristics, there's different aspects which can change. So first we have to look, what is a conventional shoe doing for the foot? So we can look at a men's dress shoe or a woman's heel shoe, and it's obvious. When you go to a wedding, the woman's like, oh, my feet hurt, right, from the heel.
And they all take them off after 20 minutes.
Exactly, because their feet hurt, which everyone knows. You don't have to be in this podcast or be a rocket scientist to tell someone your heels are bad for you, because it's obvious. It's completely changing your biomechanics and the way your body's moving and standing. But even regular shoes, men's dress shoes, sneakers, have a slight heel. This is known in the barefoot world as a drop or an elevated heel. The drop is the angle from the top of the shoe to the bottom of the shoe. So even a 1 millimeter drop is slightly changing the way I'm on the floor, which is A, shortening my Achilles tendon and my calf slightly, which is not bad. If I spend the rest of the time barefooted, my body will get used to it. But if I'm always in a contracted state, I'll lose range of motion in my ankle, right?
Yeah.
That's number one. So the drop we want to eliminate, which means there's shoes out there like Ultra and a Splay and other companies which didn't go the minimalist route. They went the route of a regular sneaker, specifically Ultra. They're known for this, but they have a no elevated heel, so that you can have a marshmallow style, but no elevated heel. So that's the most important thing to eliminate. So even people who don't want to go on the barefoot shoe train, they don't want to run, they don't want ground feel, they have injuries, they're old, whatever it is, eliminate the drop from your shoe, because that's the most harmful. The second thing that's most harmful is the narrow toe box. Now, when we walk, run, squat, jump, stand up from a chair, we need to, in order for optimal stability to stand on one leg, we need to be able to press our big toe, our pinky toe, and heel into the floor. That's called a tripod foot. That's what's going to optimize stability when squatting, jumping, landing, and even when running or sprinting. Because in running or sprinting, my big toe is responsible for a very large portion of my ability to run, my gait, and extend my foot. So my big toe is pressing into the floor, I can really produce force into the calf, into the shin, into the quad, into the hamstring. If my big toe is smushed in, my other toes are going to have the responsibility instead, which is not the way my biomechanics are supposed to be. If my big toe has that good splay, the force is going to be distributed like it is. A narrow toe box will not only prevent your foot from having that tripod foot and functioning properly, but actually if performing in a narrow toe box shoe, it's long-term damaging the big toe because the big toe gets used to not being so used. And then when you take off the shoe, you have a bunion. Now, people say bunions are genetic. They're not. I'm going to dispel the myth for you. Maybe 1% cases. Have you ever seen a baby with a bunion?
I have not.
Exactly. I haven't either, and I see lots of babies. I've seen lots of youth. Bunions start at the age of 5, 10, when they start wearing shoes, especially athletes, because cleats are notoriously narrow. So if I can eliminate the heel, right, the drop, and the narrow toe box, I'm good. You got the stamp of approval. It may not be called a true minimalist shoe, but you'll be still keeping that marshmallow style shoe, eliminating the negative aspects. Now, there's some other aspects that we want to address, like arch support, which is also a myth. Babies' feet are flat when they're born. And what happens at 3 years old? They take them to the doctor, orthopedist, podiatrist, whatever it is, and they give them an insole. Now, if my baby's hand is small, right? I don't have a kitty, I only have Charlie the dog, and I say his hand's not growing. So the doctor will be like, oh, you have to immobilize the hand so it keeps on growing. Does that make any sense to you?
It does
It
not.
does not, right? So his foot is flat because his arch didn't develop yet. In fact, if you let him spend time, him or her, as much time barefoot as possible, the arch will strengthen on itself. Not only that, but if you put heavy shoes on your kid's feet, you're not only preventing his or her ability of his foot to get stronger, but you're also giving him heavy objects on his feet. This kid weighs 10, 20, 30 kilo. And you're putting objects that weigh heavy on his feet. And you'll see how kids run with shoes, how heavy they are and how clunky they are, and how much lighter they run when they wear light shoes. So it's very important that you do not, especially for kids in developing, do not give them arch support. Do not put an insole in the shoe. The shoe should be flat with zero arch support. Another element is the sole. And this is where it gets kind of differentiating. Vivo barefoot soles can be somewhere between 4 millimeters to 10 millimeters, depending on the model, because the hiking ones have more lugs to give better traction. The sole is going to differ between person to person. An experienced barefooter like myself can hike hundreds of kilometers barefoot or with a very, very thin sole. Someone who's newer to the barefoot world will have a harder time wearing such a thin sole because their feet are not strong enough to handle not only the force of constantly pushing your foot into the ground, walking, running, hiking, but also the ground feel. You'll be stepping on rocks, and the fascias of your feet are not used to smushing themselves onto hard objects like rocks and other bumpy surface terrains. So beginner barefooters shouldn't start with a marshmallow shoe, but they should start with a relatively thicker sole, which, by the way, why all Vivo shoes come with an insole. Start with the insole, take it out. The insole's adding you another 2-3 millimeters of thickness to help you transition on your journey. Then when you take the insole out, you suddenly have more ground feel. You advance the step in the barefoot world. And this sole thickness can be from 2-3 millimeters, like a Vibram 5-finger shoe, the toe shoes, all the way to 10, 15, and even 20 with ultra running shoes. So that's the sole. Two other characteristics that we like is lightweight, right? We don't want something heavy, especially with babies. They're going to be picking up extremely heavy shoes in their feet. We want something as light as possible. We want something flexible and bendy because that's what the foot does. And lastly, we want something firmly attached to the foot because the first thing that people respond is a flip-flop, right? Flip-flops thin, zero drop. If it's not firmly attached to the foot, it's going to affect your gait as well. Your heel is going to be repetitively stemming into the floor, and your toes are going to be scrunching too hard to keep the flip-flop attached to your foot. So we said, to summarize, heel and wide toe box. Eliminate the heel, eliminate narrow toe box. Most important. The drop is individual. Keep it lightweight, keep it flexible. Flexible is going to differ between shoe to shoe. And the closer it has all these traits, it's going to be closer to allowing your foot to function as best as possible.
So we have a spectrum here of minimalist shoes.
Definitely.
So when people think about potentially trying this to dabble with this world of barefoot, there's no need to go all out.
Correct.
And to damage yourself.
Correct.
Because you can find products that will slowly
Help you
with the transition. Okay, so in addition to the we spoke about the transition of maybe taking it slow, maybe try running one time with your conventional shoe, one time with your barefoot shoe. We spoke about different levels in the spectrum of marshmallow, arch support, flexibility, zero drop, etc. Where does exercise come in, or specific exercises for the feet come in?
Fantastic. So it's funny you're asking this because this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I put up on our Instagram once, twice a week, Barefoot Education. So the two things that are the most powerful tools, in addition to strength training, mobility, is taking any sort of hard ball. That could be a baseball, softball, golf ball, lacrosse ball, even like a wooden stick that rolls, even a water bottle, and just rolling out your foot on it. Go front to front, go side to side, take some deep breaths, really press, try to even stand on the ball or object. And what we're doing is twofold. A, you're releasing the fascia of your feet. So all the tension that builds up there, you're getting it supple and soft. So any pain that hurts, a lot of times it can be released by rolling out your feet on the ball. Simple task. I could brush my teeth. I could be in a podcast while rolling out my ball simultaneously, as long as my podcast host lets. Maybe I'm doing it right now. And it also gets my foot used to texture. We spoke before about how if I have a very thin sole, I suddenly step on the rock, my body's like, this is not so
So is
much
that
fun.
something your foot actually gets used to?
Yes, it
Because
does.
I was recently on a beach vacation,
Mm.
and the water was absolutely beautiful. The sand was incredible. In between the incredible sand and the beautiful water were lots of rocks and stones. So you had to walk for about maybe 10 meters of stones in order to get into this beautiful body of water. So people like myself and the friends that I was with, it took us way too long to get past that 10 meters of stones. So much so that after the first couple times of experiencing that pain, we started wearing our flip-flops just for those 10 meters. And then once we get into the beautiful body of water, take the flip-flops off and hold them in our hands and try and enjoy the water while holding the flip-flops in one hand. At the same time, local kids that are from that area were running on the rocks. So if one of their soccer balls, footballs flew onto the rocks, I saw them sprint and not even hesitate for 1 second. So to my original question, is that something you get used to?
Yes. Now we're speaking about the superpower of being a barefooter. So when you roll out your feet every day, you're not only releasing the fascia, you're getting your body used to texture exposure. And part of the exercises we give to beginner barefooters, facility with the athletes I work at, is every day when you go out, you go to the park, you don't have to go barefoot. Don't do anything extreme. Take your shoes off. Expose yourself to grass. See how it feels. Expose yourself to concrete. Ooh, a little more difficult, right? Expose yourself to the rock bed. It's difficult. But as you roll your feet out every day on a hard surface, your tissues start adapting to terrain. And this is very relevant for barefoot runners, right? They're going to step on rocks. In fact, if you go trail running, you will be slower. You will be more cautious, but you'll be stepping on rocks, thorns, weird bumpy terrains, and your body adapts to the terrain around it, and your foot learns how to be more resilient. You'll still be slower than a cushioned runner, obviously, because they have something that's not their body, that doesn't have nerves to feel it, but you'll be much more aware because when you step on the rock, your knee and hip, I have to bend a little bit more, and I have to breathe a certain way. Release the air as I run. So you'll actually become a much more aware runner as you feel the ground beneath you, which is how you won't sprain your ankle. Sprains happen when we lose our proprioception. We lose our ability to feel the ground. So I step on a big rock, and my body, instead of feeling that there's a big rock, I have to adapt to it. It kind of like, can't do that. And I just sprain my ankle. Whereas if I understand that there's a sharp object there, I kind of, bend. So I was in Soccer Park near my house a few weeks ago, and I was playing Frisbee, and I stepped on something really sharp, and I was fell down screaming in pain, and it turned out I stepped on a bee, and it stung me, and I told the bee, hey, I'm a barefooter. You're not supposed to be able to penetrate my skin. But at the end, it's a joke, obviously. I mean, I really stepped on a bee. It wasn't so nice. But I can step on terrains easily. Like those kids, what's good about those kids is that they probably barely wear shoes. So they never even exposed their feet to this bad nerve blocking shoe. But people like us, in order to regain our proprioception, foot function, and actually feel what's going on in our feet, we're going to have to spend a few years or a few months transitioning off regular shoes and either spending time barefoot or wearing barefoot shoes so we can relearn what it is to feel the ground beneath us.
One thing I did notice, and you touched on it here, walking motion, even running, can become, usually is, I think, with most people, an autonomous action. So once you start walking, you don't really think about your next step, right? You just walk. When I try and walk barefoot, now not with my
barefoot or with barefoot shoes?
So
completely
barefoot.
The way.
Now, again, a few minutes here and there. Now I'm cautious. I'm aware of every step I take. So I'm actually involved in this action of walking. And then I kind of want to pause my music. I kind of want to take my headphones out because I actually have to focus here. So some people will tell you, why are you wasting time now? It can be an autonomous movement and you can just walk. I think that when I finish walking for 10 minutes barefoot and I've engaged in it and I was aware of every step that I took, actually I can say I enjoyed walking more. Did you feel the same way when you started?
Absolutely. In fact, my barefoot journey didn't just start a enhanced athletic performance journey for me. It enhanced a greater connection to the world around me. So there's a concept of grounding, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is basically connecting our feet to the earth. I won't dive into the science right now, but if you can feel the ground beneath you, you're super aware of what's going on. You feel the texture, you feel the terrain, and for some people it can be spiritual. And I find that barefoot walking is such a nice hack because you're not just getting movement, you're feeling the ground beneath you. So you're getting sunshine, you're getting fresh air, and you're getting a free massage for your feet if you're walking on rocks or any sort of texture. And same. I don't want to listen to music. I don't want to be on my phone. I just want to feel. And it's made me so much more present with earth. And I know I sound like a tree hugger. I love hugging trees. I love hugging trees. I like grounding. But this journey started the more holistic me. Before this barefoot journey, I was just, lifting, training, nutrition, regular guy. It started this journey where I'm wearing, grounding sandals and wearing, pants that are only made out of cotton. Like it totally launched this more holistic, connected spiritual self, and I try to bring this message to my athletes as well.
Tree hugging. So I want to believe that most people in your life now they know you and know what to expect. Number one, but do people question you? Do they think, come on, Sean?
So when I kiss the tree, people are like, "What's going on, man?" But then it's like, "Wow, this tree is so cool, right?" So being a Leo type, being this fiery personality, I tend to be a leader. So it's not so much do they question me, I think as they learn from me. Oh, wow, this guy knows stuff. But at the same time, I'm pretty selective about who I spend time with. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, I play frisbee, rugby, football, flag football, tennis every week with friends. No one's, getting deep into my personal life. But the people who know me personally are pupils of mine. Meaning, even if they're not intentionally, like, oh, yeah, there's something about this barefoot thing. I would say I've converted 70% of my friends to barefoot lifestyle, cold exposure, heat exposure, training, mobility, movement, just because that's my nature as a leader. If someone questions me, that's okay. I'll usually have an answer for them. If I don't, we can still be friends.
I get questioned, and I'm only scratching the surface, and I get questioned all the time.
I think it's important. I have clients, so like I'm an educator. So when I train someone, whether it's in the gym or on the field, I don't just say, do this, you'll get better. I explain when we get our leg to triple extension and strike with the forefoot, you're getting better at running. And my athletes actually tease me, Sean, stop talking. We gotta train, you know what I mean? But clients are constantly asking me questions, and I've never failed to come up with an answer. Meaning when a client asks me or an athlete asks me a question, I'm happy because it's challenging my understanding of the human body. And every time I get off a conversation with a client, even if it's a complex one, the lumbar paradox and how the bicep flex and rotation, it challenges me. Do I really know my stuff, or am I just,
So does it make you sometimes, that question challenges you? Does it make you, let me get back to you? You go home, you test it on yourself,
Absolutely.
you research?
In fact, every injury I get, I learned so much from it, not just for me, but for my athletes. Hey, if I tore my infraspinatus, one of the rotator cuff muscles, I now can help someone who did the same, and maybe I can understand what caused the tear in the first place.
The thing I get questioned about the most.
Your hair.
No, I've accepted that. I ignore comments, especially from my mum,
no.
who tells me it's time to grow up. But
no growing up.
The thing I get questioned about the most from my friends is toe separators.
Ooh. Wait, why? You've been starting to wear them?
Maybe an hour a day, a couple hours a day when I work, when I'm sitting. I throw on my toe separators, or I have them sitting on my desk. So if someone comes over to my place, they see
it's a great conversation starter.
Toe separators. So yeah, where does that come in? Is it a helpful tool to use in the transition?
Okay, so first of all, toe separators like toe shoes are a great conversation starter. So if you're someone like me, a barefoot educator, great way to do it. You come out, you meet a client for the first time. What are you wearing? Oh, I sell them for $9.99. Just kidding. But actually, I do sell them. But you're actually you're saying, I'm special. I would like to share my specialness with you. So toe separators or toe spacers are not a replacement for strengthening your foot, strengthening your arch, splaying your toes manually with your fingers, kind of like an active chair. We're going to go back to the example because it's a great example. It's not a replacement for a sedentary lifestyle and eating McDonald's all day. Sorry, McDonald's. But McDonald's in Israel is actually a little bit healthier. But toe separators do two things. Number one, they help your toes to go back into alignment the way they should be. Now, if you're an experienced barefooter, you may not need them as much. But if your big toes always constantly pushed in from conventional shoes, It helps them put them back the way they are. They increase your blood circulation. They could also increase recovery of the fascia in between, because if the toes are always tight together, by spreading them out, they're obviously increasing fascia and help loosening it a bit. But even more so, they actually can help sometimes with foot function and gait, because once again, it's pushing the big toe in. It's getting my big toe used to moving in a certain manner instead of moving pushed in. But it's all part of the process. So same like you, I'll be working or I'll be watching a TV show and I'll just pop it on my feet. Sometimes I'll wear it while I'm training, but I don't wear it too much while I'm training, because I actually, at this point in my barefoot career, I want my feet to be functioning without any assistance. But toe separators are definitely a very helpful tool in anyone transitioning to barefoot. And something I do in my workplace, I spoke about health, not just being, gymming and working out and nutrition. Right near my standing desk, I have a mobility bucket. In my mobility bucket, I have toe splitters, a band, lacrosse ball, finger strengtheners, grip thingies. So whenever I'm getting antsy while I'm working on the computer, I just kind of, pick out something. Sometimes I'll put the toe spacers on, I'll flex my toe, extend my toe. So I think it's a cool tool to have as part of the greater foot health and health journey. And it's passive. You don't have to work, just put them on. Kind of like barefoot shoes, just put them on, switch them out for your non-barefoot shoes.
And it's such an easy thing to do, but even that seems like sometimes like a chore. Like sometimes I'll look at my toe spacers and, okay, I'll put you on. And every time I do, I'm always happy with myself. And you feel the blood circulate.
Absolutely.
When you take them off, then wow. And then you see how naturally your foot is more spread and just feels better. So I'm in that process and slowly, or hopefully slowly getting to where I want to be, because I played soccer my entire life. I've worn cleats most of my life. I've trained in marshmallows my entire life off the field.
We should patent that, the marshmallow shoe.
You should, yeah. But I notice in my feet, and I'm only in the stage now where I'm starting to look at my feet objectively and notice them, and I can see a disbalance as well. I notice that on one foot, I can have control over certain toes. On my other foot, I do not. I can see that I have formed some sort of a bunion on one side, but the other side I have not. So it's amazing to me how I've spent also my entire life training. I won't give myself the credit saying at the highest level, but trying to train as much as possible, focusing on stretching, on mobility, on power, on speed, on strength, coordination, everything I can to be a better athlete, but not thinking about my feet and allowing them to be choked all the time, and getting the advice from people to get half a size smaller. Crazy to me. You mentioned that you try and walk the walk, not just talk the talk, no pun intended, but walk the walk with your pupils, with your students, with your friends, anyone in your life. What is the ideal day for Sean?
So first of all, I feel like Dr. Huberman here, if you've ever heard of him. He's like, here's the ideal day. So I'm actually excited to speak about this topic because I woke up this morning at around 8 a.m. Woke up my wife. She's traveling, help her pack a bit. First thing, I usually start my day with some sort of movement. Now, movement is not only physical movement, like let me go to the gym, let me go to the forest, let me do pull-ups. Movement can be things like breath work. Movement can be things like meditating. My air is moving through my body. But some sort of, let me kickstart my day with something positive. I do struggle at the moment because I get lots of WhatsApps, Facebooks, Instagrams, emails, some of them good ones. Hey, you just closed the 50,000 shekel contract. I do find, I'll give you an example. Yeah. I'm getting interviewed in a podcast in Tel Aviv. So it's sometimes I feel that my dopamine system loves checking my phone first thing in the morning because it's like, what reward are we going to have today? But I am very conscious I try to keep my phone off in the morning, half an hour. First, let me feel the real life. What is life? What does the sun feel like today? What does nature feel like today? What does it feel like to sit and have coffee with my wife or something? Or in this case, have coffee at 12 o'clock with my friend. So with movement. Now that movement sometimes will be some mobility. Sometimes it'll be a gym session. Sometimes it will be a sauna. And in the sauna, I'll read or journal. Sometimes I'll do breath work as well. Kind of, passive hacking my life. Sometimes I will go for a light walk with Charlie. After that movement session, it's not normally my strenuous gym session. It's usually just something. I'll start my work day. Now, some days I start work with clients right away, training athletes in the gym. Some days I have more.
Are most of your sessions one-on-one?
So I would say my time right now, the field work is a large percentage in the field. I'm in charge of 5 national teams in the moment in the flag football teams of Israel, and I'm also working privately with athletes in the gym. So it's kind of a mix. Right, I don't have athletes every day. Also, I do enjoy working with people one-on-one, but it's not most of my day. Most of my day is virtual coaching, online coaching, whatever it be. So I finish my movement in the morning. Sometimes I'll have a coffee. I would say 8 out of 10 times I'll have a black coffee. Sometimes I'll do caffeine deload, so I'll sub it out with tea or a decaf coffee instead. Make sure the decaf is Swiss milled, which is the best way to make the beans decaf without putting too much toxicity in them. After that, I have the choice. I'm either training my first 1, 2, or 3 clients, or I spend some time writing. I find that my creative brain is the best in the morning. If I push off the creative to later, it's not going to happen. Sit in front of the computer, I could be writing a blog post on barefoot shoes. I could be writing education about strength and conditioning. I could be writing my book. Sometimes I'll journal. Sometimes the journaling will happen in the sauna. I check off light movement. I check off creative energy. I'm done for the day. Not really. I have a lot more, but I'm saying even if I do nothing else that day, I feel successful.
That's your foundation.
My foundation is some sort of light movement, whatever that may be. Usually sauna, ice bath as well, some sort of extreme to cold temperature, channeling my creative energy. And then in addition to that, I also try to pray, meditate. I do the Jewish form of prayer, but I journal, listen to music while I'm doing it. Everyone can pray however they want to see fit, because I like connecting not just to my physical self, I like connecting to my spiritual self. So some people may not find meaning in the Christian, Jewish, or Arab rituals that they do, but so find something that is meaningful for you. If nature is spiritual and it feels connected to something greater than you, then do it. If singing is, do it. If chanting or playing piano, there's so many stuff that people could do to be spiritual. Then I'll usually work out, still in the morning, strenuous. When I say workout, I'm very active throughout the day. Even now, I'm moving my hands every second. Strenuous workout, hour in the gym, or later in the evening, I'll do it on the field. After that, the rest of my day differs a lot based on the day, but I also run both my Instagram accounts, so I'll spend a good 30 to 60 minutes of time. I try to give myself a budget, otherwise it will just swamp you up forever, creating content.
Where can people find you on Instagram?
So, great question. Instagram, you can find me in 2 places, The Barefoot Athlete, the.barefoot athlete, and you can find me at The Barefoot Shoe Review, which is my other account where I review minimalist footwear and provide a worldwide source for barefoot education. 30 to 60 minutes a day, creating content, stories, engaging. In addition to that, sometime early afternoon, emails, WhatsApps, Facebooks, Instagrams, all the correspondence with clients. I also virtually coach hundreds of clients around the world who are all on my online programs. And part of what I offer, I get to pitch my stuff here, right, is 24-hour line to me. So people are asking me, hey, is my squat good? Hey, can you change my program? Blueberries. I'm there for them, whatever it is. I'm relatively limited how many clients I take because of this service. Afternoon, once again, I'll play with my dog Charlie. I'll take him out. I'll usually spend some time reading a nonfiction book. It could be a health book. It could be a biohacking book. It could be a nutrition book. It could be a movement book. I'm trying to educate myself in that manner. Some point later in the day, I'll usually spend some more time writing. And then as I get to the 4 p.m. slot, I train another person or 2, or I head to the field where I work with my national teams. That's 2-3 times a week. Once a week, I work with Formula 1 soldiers as well. But from my time to do whatever I want, freelance for myself, is between 10, 11 a.m. to around 3, 4 p.m. when I'm doing whatever needs to be done that day. 4 or 5 p.m., I'm back in structured work mode, which is working with the national teams, fixing online programs, running my workshops, working with Formula 1 soldiers, corresponding with other people. But every day, no matter what, I make sure to expose myself to extremes. That could be heat or cold. I get out in nature and sunshine. I do some form of prayer or spirituality. Sometimes it's not the Jewish way. Sometimes it's just, humming to myself or breathing, meditating.
But taking the time to
Taking the time to be mindful. Phones off, unless it's on light music in the background, but I'm just keeping, being mindful. I journal every day. I try to write every day, which is either I like to channel my creative energy. That could be juggling. Something that makes my mind work. I train every day, and I try to interact with humans every day. Now, that interaction is not something I have to look for because I train people. So I interact with humans. But, for example, my wife's traveling for the next 2 weeks. I know, me, Sean, I like companionship. So I made up dates with good friends of mine. Hey, let's hang out. Let's have dinner at the pizza place near me. Oh, we can't say pizza. Let's hang out. Let's go throw around a Frisbee. I want human interaction, and it's very important to me. And people who live in isolation in this day and age where your Amazon fridge automatically orders the food for you, and you work online, you never have to see anybody, you don't realize how, as humans, we evolve to be social. You have to see and interact with people, even if you're an introvert. It's part of what our body needs.
So that's the ideal day for Sean.
That's the ideal day for me. And I try
Yeah.
to pass this message on to my athletes that it's not just about, training in the gym, then sitting. It's about movement. Let's go back to like half an hour ago when you spoke about the active chair. People who get standing desk treadmills. You know what I'm talking about? Like treadmill by the desk.
Yeah. Although I've never heard of anyone that implementing that successfully long-term in their lives.
So imagine you're on a podcast with me on Zoom and I'm on my treadmill. It's perfect because walking and talking are passive. I can be on the phone and talk at the same time. I can be on the phone and walk at the same time. And I can be 2 hours later, I won't even notice how much I walked. Quick hack. If you're ever taking a phone call, client, friend, go for a walk. You won't even notice how far you walked. If you're worried about going too far from your home and you have to walk back, so stay on the phone longer with them or do a loop walk. But you can't do deep work while on a treadmill. I've tried it. You can't be typing your next chapter of your book while walking. You can do passive things like listening to a podcast or talking to someone. But the concept is that how much low intensity movement can I jam in throughout my day? Breathwork, mobility, walking, ground sitting, barefoot shoes, ground sleeping, things that are hacking my life that don't really require. How much effort do toe spaces really require? 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a couple conversations with my coworkers. Like if you can find these small things in your day that are passive, that don't require that much more physical activity, even if it's a journey to optimize it, then do it. That's really the ideal day.
What is, don't forget to drink your coffee. I'm conscious that only I'm drinking my coffee.
So we'll finish.
I don't want you to fall asleep. Do you have any, for yourself, I know you spend a lot of your time coaching athletes from all different types of sports, improving their performance, their abilities. Do you have any goals for yourself?
Absolutely. So
where are you heading? Tell me.
So first of all, Olympics 2028. Not as an athlete, as a coach. I'll be there. That's the plan. I'll be taking Team Israel's national flag football team there. The flag football will be in the Olympics then. So that's kind of my...
Will that be the first time?
Yes. It will be the first time. Now, obviously, it's on me as a coach to produce the best athletes strongest, fast as possible, but it's also on them.
Where is the Olympics 2028?
I'm not sure yet, but I know that the Euros next year, which is going to be a place contender, which means we have to place in a certain place next year, is going to be in Ireland. That's the plan. I'm flying in 2-3 weeks to Austria with the women's team to compete there. In December, we have Germany coming here for a mutual training camp. I train all the teams. So I work with the adult men, the adult women, the U17 women, the U17 men, and the co-ed U15. They're all national teams. And this month, I'll be starting work with the outstanding athletes of the Army who are going to get time off to work with me as well. So it's like, lately, it's been a big chunk of my life working with athletes, but this is what I live for. Yeah. I can sum up my purpose statement like I want people to be healthier, stronger, better, more spiritual, more holistically connected. And working with athletes, these people are at the highest standard of life. Regular people aren't. These people are treating themselves like athletes, so someone like me can really make a very big impact to them because I want them to succeed and they want to succeed.
And I feel that from you.
Yeah.
But about yourself,
right.
Physically, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's very important that everyone sets not goals in life. And the goal should be something very, very tangible and specific. So people come to me, regular person, not athlete type, and they say, I want to lose weight or I want to get stronger. Those are very vague. I call these vanilla goals. If you like vanilla ice cream better than chocolate, I apologize.
So we have marshmallow, this podcast, and now we're on to vanilla.
We should really go to Golda. What's it called? Not Golda. Golda? Is it the ice cream store? We should go to Golda after, get some good ice cream, maybe a cinnamon flavor. I'm a cinnamon guy. Vanilla goals. I want to lose weight. I want to get strong. I want to get fast. I want my pain to go away. Chocolate goals. I want to be able to achieve a pull-up. I want to be able to be fast enough so I can beat their receiver every time they take me in football, right? I want to be able to bench press 100 kilo. My client last week, Sean, I want to be able to drink coffee in a deep squat. Why? Why not? That's a great goal to have. And we did it. Yesterday, I'm sitting with the guy. I have the picture, Google Pixel portrait mode. I'm like, dude, we just spent 2 months working towards this. Now imagine he came to me and said, I want to feel better. So in 2 months' time, after working with him, I say, hey, you feel better? Maybe, I don't know. When you can check off a chocolate goal, it's much easier. So I found that in life, first of all, I reevaluate and write down my goals in my journal practically every day. So I have my life purpose and I journal, am I tapping into this life purpose?
So even if yesterday you wrote down XYZ,
exactly.
Today you might still write down XYZ.
It may be modified. It's like every day is different. But let's say my goal is to help people become better, stronger, faster, and more connected to their holistic self. Am I tapping into my life purpose every day? That's my real goal. For example, after spending an hour podcast with you, I feel pretty good about myself. Why? Because I'm able to share my message with the world, and I don't know how many people are going to hear it. It could be 50, it could be 5,000. So it gives me some sort of fulfillment, even though it's a 2-3 hour journey. That dopamine dies down a bit. Then I go to the field and I train national teams for 3.5 hours. Once again, I'm not only working and getting paid for it, which is always nice because we like supporting ourselves, but I'm actually fulfilling my purpose when I work. So all these things are very meaningful, and I try to live towards my purpose every day. From a personal aspect, because that was your real question, I try to play competitive sport at least once a week. Competitive sport, not Olympic level, but ultimate frisbee at a very high level, flag football at the highest level. Like I'll scrimmage against my players because I find that if I can play at this level of sports and stay healthy and be the fastest and be strong and be supple and be mobile, everything I'm doing in my training is working. So that's kind of like my little test for myself. As I get older, not that I like the term because I'll be the same person when I'm 50. That's the plan.
Hopefully, yeah.
That's God willing. That's the plan, is to keep up the activity. I may not be the strongest, I may not be the fastest, but I'll be healthy, supple, be able to pick my grandkids over my head.
Okay, but is that a chocolate goal for you?
The chocolate goal for me is to be able to be that role model for my athletes. And when we sprint, I want to be the first one. And when I'm playing sports with them, I want to be decent enough to be able to keep up with elite level athletes. Coaches aren't always at the level of their athletes. In fact, most Olympic coaches are retired. I want to be that coach who can compete with them if I wanted to.
But is another chocolate goal being 50 and being...
So that's the ultimate longevity goal. And that's what I say to my clients who are older, 50 years old, 60 years old, maybe used to be gymnasts, but are now just doing longevity. I say, your goal when you're 80 years old is that you can hang on the monkey bars with your kid. You can run up the hill with them and have no problem. You can toss around a football with them and not worry about injury. You can race them in a sprint and, tie or win. So for any random person who's not an athlete, or even athletes, if you look at the long-term goal, the chocolate goal is, can I keep up with the rigors of life and carry my groceries home at the age of 80? Or will I be bound in a wheelchair?
When you're an athlete,
Yes.
it's the chocolate goals are pretty much enforced on you because on the weekend, you want to be good enough so the coach picks you to play. And if he does pick you or she picks you, you want to be your chocolate goals now to perform. And then even if you performed well, your next chocolate goal is to win the game. And even if you won the game, the next chocolate goal is to be good the next session so you can get picked again for the next game and win the next game, etc., forever. For you personally, when you face your own personal chocolate goals in life, sorry that I'm adopting this.
I like it. Use it.
Term.
Please use it.
If you're unsuccessful in completing or reaching your chocolate goal, how do you deal with that?
So that's interesting. So yesterday I had on my podcast one of my athletes, and we spoke about being vulnerable as an athlete. How it's okay to channel your emotions and be down and be sad and not feel accomplished. So I would think that a lot of my life I'm on sort of a high. Not a hallucinogenic-based high, but a life high. I'm killing. I love life. There's no reason not to, other than driving for an hour. But I love meeting people. I love being on podcasts. I love training people. I love being in the ice bath. I love doing workshops. So I'm basically living my life purpose constantly. But for every high, especially in my personality type, there's also going to be a down. So it used to be whenever I was down, I'm a failure. I didn't hit that chocolate goal today. I only hit the cinnamon roll goal. And in the past year or two, as I've matured, maybe Corona changed things. Maybe now we're gonna get tagged for that. maybe being barefoot changed things. Maybe I just matured. I realized that emotional work is equally important. So if you have an unpleasant interaction with a colleague or a head coach, you just struggle to hit the PR on the bench press for 100 kilo emotionally. So after that interaction, I say to myself, I journal about it. Okay, you asked how I handle it. I journal it. And I speak to my wife about it. How did I handle that interaction? It made me feel a little bit bad. Why did it make me feel bad? What about them is triggering me? Why am I getting triggered by this interaction? And then I get brownie points. Then I added some chocolate syrup to my vanilla because I learned something from the situation. And then in 5 years' time, I'm dealing with not a colleague, but a guy who I'm trying to close the $10 million deal with or create a nonprofit with, whatever it is. I know how to handle people better. So you're not always going to chocolatefy your goals. You're not always going to hit the chocolate on the cherry on top. But when you don't, take that as learning experience and understand how I can improve so either I can hit the chocolate better or I can be more emotionally prepped to deal with this. Because we're human beings. You and me are emotional. We're not just statues who are out there to crush the world. We're out there to deal with the world and feel our feelings. And that is a very important point that we didn't really touch on yet.
I think it might be the most important point. Tell me, before we finish up, because I'm curious, besides, again, always being active on a day, every day pretty much throughout the day as you are, in addition to competing in all these different sports with your athletes, without your athletes at a high level to challenge yourself, what other specific training session do you do for yourself to challenge yourself physically when you're alone?
Great question.
If that happens.
I have, yeah, that stuff. So I found that practically all my hobbies in the past few years are movement related. I slackline, I frisbee, I football, I mobility, acro yoga. A few months ago, I took up juggling. I had the goal by my birthday to hit juggling on a slackline. So I spent like 2 weeks learning how to juggle from zero. I had no prior background, and I got to it. I'm very, very motivated when I have a triple chocolate goal. Around a year ago, I looked at all my hobbies, and I said, I want something new. So I was thinking of taking up fencing, tried it a little bit. I was thinking of taking up a new sport, and I said, hold up. Your career is in the sports and movement world. If you move again, is it a true fulfilling hobby if it's just another sport? So I took up singing. And singing was the missing link for me because singing for me, first of all, it's breath work. Controlling your diaphragm, understanding how to tap into it. It's very, very spiritual. Singing is inherently the language of the soul, and you're tapping into, depth, especially if you're singing Jewish music. But I finally found an outlet that I can work towards to and practice and warm up my voice, practice on my own, and practice with my coach that had nothing to do with my work. Not the gym, not the field, could be done anywhere. It doesn't require a lot of equipment, and I discovered that I have a pretty good voice.
Does one's voice improve over time?
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, not to flatter myself, but my coach should tell me like, whoa, this guy has a good voice. I didn't know how to channel it properly. I learned how to use my diaphragm. Like I learned how to really open up my diaphragm to sing. I learned how to warm up my voice. Apparently similar to training where we spend 10 to 30 minutes warming up. 30 to 60 minutes is if you want to perform, you have to warm up. And I discovered that I have a very, very voice that's very like operatic, kind of like Andre Bocelli, like a tenor. Okay, so I can really belt out the notes as I do it. And I started singing a little bit of, especially after the high holidays of Judaism, I started doing little cantoral stuff. And I'm like, this is something I love, I'm passionate about, and it has nothing to do with work. So we're not even going to chocolate, we're going to call it strawberry cheesecake flavor. And it's something that I like doing. And that's like another thing that I can do in my life. Meditative, soul, spiritual, kind of taps off all the thing. And I encourage everyone out there, even athletes, to find a hobby that has nothing to do with your workplace or your sport so you can have like a life that for yourself. Be selfish. Be yourself with that one.
I love that you try new things. Again, I love your prism of thought. It makes me think, it makes me challenge myself because we get stuck in certain ways. And I think people get lost in what they think they already know, what they think they've already discovered when they were kids, when they were teenagers, when they were young adults, when they're all adults, when they have kids. They think that they know because they know, but they might not know. So thank you for challenging me. Thank you for being here today. And next time we have you on, I hope we'll get you to sing, if that's okay with you.
I have to warm up my voice first, but absolutely.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so grateful that you brought me out here and looking forward to the next time.
Thank you very much.